They are not testing your words. They are testing your control. Let's be honest. Some people do not disrespect you loudly. They do it quietly. They interrupt you while you are speaking. They make a small joke that sounds harmless, but somehow lands like an insult. They dismiss your opinion before you finish explaining it. They answer your effort with a half smile, a cold tone, or a casual whatever, as if your presence is something they can ignore without consequence. And the worst part is not always what they say. The worst part is what happens inside you. Your chest tightens. Your face changes. Your mind starts looking for the perfect response. You want to correct them. You want to prove that you are not weak. You want to show them that they cannot talk to you that way. But that urge is where the trap begins. Because disrespect becomes powerful the moment it controls your reaction. Most people think they are defending their dignity when they react immediately. They snap back. They explain. They raise their voice. They try to win the moment. But often, they are not winning. They are simply showing the other person where the button is. And once someone knows how to press that button, they do not need to respect you. They only need to provoke you. That is the first Stoic lesson. Do not react on command. A disrespectful person is often not looking for truth. They are looking for movement. They want to see if one careless sentence can pull you out of yourself. They want to know whether your peace is solid or reachable. If they can make you emotional, they can shift the focus. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about their disrespect. It becomes about your reaction. You are too sensitive. You are dramatic. You cannot take a joke. You made it awkward. This is one of the oldest games in human nature. Provoke someone, then judge them for responding. So the first way to deal with people who do not respect you is not a comeback. It is a pause. A controlled pause. Not the pause of fear, not the pause of confusion. The pause of someone who saw what happened and refused to be dragged. You breathe. You slow down. You let the moment sit there. You do not rush to fix the discomfort they created. You do not laugh just to make the room feel lighter. You do not explain why the comment bothered you before you even understand what it revealed. You let the disrespect expose itself. That small pause changes the entire power dynamic. Because most disrespectful people are ready for anger. They are ready for nervous laughter. They are ready for defensiveness. They are ready for you to over-explain. They are not ready for calm. Calm ruins their rhythm. Imagine being in a meeting. You are trying to make a point, but someone keeps cutting you off. The first time, you let it pass. The second time, you try to continue. The third time, you feel that heat rising in your body. Most people would rush in harder, but instead, you stop. You turn your attention toward them. You look at them with a calm, steady expression. No smile, no anger, no performance. Just a quiet look that says, I noticed. That is the second way. Use the silent stare. A silent stare is not about intimidation. It is about refusal. You are refusing to play the role they assign to you. You are refusing to become the emotional person in the room. You are refusing to make their disrespect comfortable. And something strange happens. The person who felt powerful while interrupting suddenly becomes aware of themselves. They feel the pause. They feel the room noticing. Their words lose momentum. That is because silence with calm attention becomes a mirror. And people who enjoy disrespect often hate mirrors. They prefer noise because noise gives them cover. If you argue, they can argue back. If you get angry, They can call you unstable. If you defend yourself too much, they can act like you are insecure. But if you simply look at them and say nothing, there is nowhere for them to hide. Their behavior is standing in the open. This is not passive. It is controlled, non-participation. And it protects something more important than your image. It protects your self-command. The Stoic does not ask, how do I make them respect me right now? The Stoic asks, what part of me are they trying to control? That question brings you back to power. Because when someone disrespects you, the real danger is not always the insult. The real danger is abandoning yourself to answer it. You do not need to prove your worth every time someone acts blind to it. Sometimes, the strongest answer is the one that never lowers itself into the fight. So pause. Look. Let the silence do what your anger would only weaken. And once you understand that disrespect needs your reaction to survive, the next step becomes even clearer. Not every moment deserves your words. Silence and short answers starve disrespect of energy. Silence feels uncomfortable because most people are trained to fill it. Someone says something rude, and you feel responsible for making the moment normal again. You smile, you laugh, you soften your voice, you explain what you meant. You try to make sure nobody feels awkward. But ask yourself something. Why are you protecting disrespectful people from discomfort? That question may bother you because it reveals a hidden habit. Many people think they are being kind, but sometimes they are only afraid of tension. They call it maturity. They call it patience. But underneath, there is fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being seen as difficult. Fear of making the room uncomfortable. And disrespectful people can sense that. That is why the third way is simple. Embrace silence as your answer. Not forever. Not in every situation. But in the moments where words would only feed the person who is trying to provoke you. Silence says, I am not giving you my energy. It does not beg. It does not explain. It does not perform. It does not turn your dignity into a debate. Imagine someone makes a sarcastic comment about your work. They say it with a smile, so if you confront it, they can hide behind humor. Relax, I was joking. But you know it was not innocent. You felt the edge. Instead of firing back, you look at them for a second. Then you say nothing. You let the comment hang. That silence creates psychological tension. It forces the person to sit with what they just said. It also forces you to stop rescuing the moment. And that is where your power begins to return. The point is not to punish them. The point is to stop rewarding disrespect with emotional access. People who disrespect others often expect a reaction because reaction gives them proof. If you become upset, they know they got in. If you defend yourself too quickly, they know you feel uncertain. If you explain too much, they know they can keep questioning you. Silence denies them that information. It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is uncomfortable for people who thought they had control. But silence alone is not enough, because after silence, another trap often appears. The trap of explaining yourself. This is where many good people lose power. They think if they explain their choices clearly enough, the other person will understand. They think if they provide more context, more reasons, more emotional honesty, then the disrespect will stop. Sometimes that works with respectful people, but with disrespectful people, explanation often becomes a slow surrender, because they are not always asking to understand. They are asking to reposition you. They ask, "Why would you do that?" But their tone already contains judgment. They ask, "Are you sure that was smart?" But they are not trying to help. They are planting doubt. They ask for reasons, then use your reasons as openings. The more you explain, the more material you give them. And slowly, without noticing, you start acting as if your life requires approval. That is dangerous. Your life is not a courtroom. You do not need to keep presenting evidence. This is the fourth way. Stop explaining yourself to people who want control, not clarity. There is a difference between communication and self-defense. Communication is offered to people who respect you. Self-defense is what you do when you believe your worth is on trial. Not everyone deserves the full story. Some people only deserve a short answer. That is what I chose. That works for me. I am comfortable with my decision. I do not need to debate that. These sentences may feel small, but they close doors. And people who are used to walking through your mind without permission will notice those doors immediately. At first, they may push harder. They may say, "I was just asking." They may accuse you of being cold or defensive. But that reaction often reveals the truth. They were not looking for clarity. They were looking for access. A respectful person can accept a boundary. A controlling person feels attacked by one. That is how you know the difference. Think about someone who questions every choice you make. Your job, your relationship, your schedule, your goals, your silence, your distance. At first, it feels normal to explain. You want to be fair. You want to be understood. But then you notice something. No explanation is ever enough. They keep pushing because the goal was never understanding. The goal was to make you doubt yourself until you return to the version of you they could manage. This is why short answers are powerful. They do not just protect your time. They protect your frame. You are no longer asking, "Do you approve of my choice?" You are saying, "This is my choice, and I am not opening it for public review." That does not make you rude. It makes you clear. And clarity is often mistaken for arrogance by people who benefited from your confusion. Let them think that. Their interpretation is not your assignment. Once you stop explaining, you may feel guilty at first. Then you feel lighter. Then you realize how much energy you wasted trying to make your decisions acceptable to people who were committed to doubting them anyway. That energy returns to you. And with it comes a deeper kind of calm, because now your power no longer depends on being understood by people who prefer you uncertain. But there is another level. If someone disrespects you once, silence may be enough. If they keep doing it, silence is no longer enough. At some point, you must stop managing the moment and start managing access. Distance turns self-respect into something real. There is a point where patience becomes participation. That sentence is uncomfortable because it removes the excuse many people hide behind. They say, "I am just being patient." But sometimes they are not being patient. They are avoiding the pain of choosing themselves. They are waiting for the disrespectful person to change so they do not have to create distance. But repeated disrespect is already an answer. You may not like the answer, but it is still an answer. If someone keeps crossing your boundaries, keeps making you feel small, keeps draining your mental space, and keeps treating your peace like it is optional, then the issue is no longer just their behavior. The issue is their access. That is the fifth way. Create distance. Distance is not hatred. It is structure. It is how self-respect becomes visible. Anyone can say, "I respect myself." But the truth is revealed by access. Who gets your time? Who gets your emotional energy? Who gets to offend you repeatedly and still receive the same closeness? Who gets to disturb your peace and still remain in the front row of your life? Your access rules reveal your self-worth, not your words. This is where many people resist the truth. They want respect without changing access. They want the other person to treat them differently while keeping the same arrangement that allowed the disrespect to grow. But human nature rarely respects invisible boundaries. People respond to changed conditions. If someone can disrespect you and still receive full access, they may apologize, but they have not been forced to reevaluate anything. They still get the same version of you, the same time, the same warmth, the same emotional availability. So the pattern continues. Distance interrupts the pattern. It does not have to be dramatic. You do not need a speech. You do not need revenge. You do not need to announce that you are removing yourself. You simply answer less. You share less. You stop giving emotional updates. You stop asking for their opinion. You become polite, but not open. Present, but not available. That difference matters, because some people do not deserve your hatred. They simply no longer deserve your closeness. This can feel especially hard when the person is familiar, a friend, a relative, a partner, a coworker, someone who has been around long enough to make distance feel like betrayal. But history does not cancel harm. Just because someone has known you for years does not mean they are allowed to keep wounding the version of you that is trying to grow. Familiarity can become a hiding place for disrespect. People say, "That is just how they are," as if repetition makes the behavior acceptable. It does not. It only means the pattern is old, and old patterns can still damage you. Think of the friend who always makes little jokes about your choices. At first, you laugh it off. Then you start expecting the jab before it comes. You change what you share. You become careful. You feel smaller around them, but you tell yourself it is not serious enough to address. That is the cost people ignore. Disrespect does not always destroy you in one moment. Sometimes it trains you to shrink slowly. Distance gives you room to see clearly again. When you step back, you may realize you were not overreacting. You were adapting to a space where your dignity was being touched again and again. You may realize your body was tense around them for a reason. You may realize that peace came back when access decreased. That realization is powerful. It is also painful. Because distance does not only separate you from a person, sometimes it separates you from the story you wanted to believe about them. This is why people avoid it. They do not want to admit that someone they care about may not be safe for their mind. They do not want to admit that the relationship only worked because they kept absorbing small disrespect. They do not want to admit that loyalty became fear wearing honorable language. But protecting your peace is not selfish. It is responsible. You are not here to be someone's emotional punching bag. You are not here to keep giving unlimited access to people with limited respect. And you are not obligated to stay close to someone just because they are used to having you there. Distance creates absence. And absence teaches what explanation often cannot. When people lose easy access to you, they finally feel the cost of how they treated you. Some will reflect. Some will resent you. Some will accuse you of changing. Some will call you dramatic. Some will suddenly act confused, as if they did not see the pattern they helped create. Let them reveal themselves. A healthy person may feel disappointed by your distance, but they will try to understand it. A disrespectful person will attack the boundary itself, because the boundary is the first thing they cannot control, and that reaction tells you everything. But distance alone is not the end. Because you can remove yourself from disrespectful people and still carry their voices inside you, you can leave the room, but still replay the insult. You can stop answering the person, but still hear them in your posture, your choices, and your self-image. So the next step is not just about who gets access to you. It is about how you stand after they fail to honor you. Hold your frame, not as an act, as a return to yourself. Hold your frame without turning your pain into armor. Before people respect your words, they often feel your frame. Your frame is the quiet message your presence sends before you explain anything. It is your tone when someone challenges you. It is your posture when someone dismisses you. It is your pace when someone tries to rush you. It is the way you do not apologize for taking up space. Many people collapse before they speak. They lower their voice. They over-smile. They laugh when they are uncomfortable. They explain too quickly. They make themselves smaller to reduce tension. They act as if the other person's approval is the oxygen in the room, and disrespectful people sense this. Human nature is always reading signals. People notice who needs permission. They notice who avoids conflict at any cost. They notice who can be mocked, delayed, ignored, or questioned without consequence. This does not mean you must act dominant. That is another trap. Holding your frame is not theater. It is not acting cold, arrogant, or untouchable. Real frame is alignment. Your words, face, posture, silence, and choices all communicate the same message. I am not beneath myself. That sentence matters, because disrespect often works by making you abandon your own level. Someone speaks to you carelessly, and suddenly you start proving your worth. Someone questions your decision, and suddenly you are defending your right to choose. Someone makes you feel small, and suddenly you perform strength for the person who triggered your insecurity. That is not power. That is captivity. Holding your frame means you do not let their behavior decide your identity in the moment. If they are rude, you do not become frantic. If they are cold, you do not chase warmth. If they dismiss you, you do not beg to be seen. You remain steady. Speak slower. Keep your shoulders relaxed. Do not rush your answer. Do not fill every silence. Do not chase someone who enjoys your uncertainty. These are not tricks. They are evidence that you are still inside yourself. A grounded person does not need to win every exchange because their identity is not being decided there. They do not turn every insult into a courtroom. They do not enter every room hunting for validation. That kind of quiet confidence makes disrespectful people uncomfortable. Not because it attacks them, because it gives them nothing to control. When they expect you to shrink and you remain steady, their behavior looks smaller. When they expect you to react and you stay calm, their power weakens. When they expect you to explain and you stay clear, their access ends. You become harder to manipulate because you become harder to move. But here is the dangerous part. After being disrespected enough, some people start to enjoy becoming unreachable. They hear, "Stay calm," and turn it into emotional distance. They hear "stay powerful" and turn it into superiority. They hear "stop explaining" and turn it into refusing all vulnerability. That is not Stoicism. That is injury becoming an identity. There is a difference between self-respect and emotional armor. Self-respect protects your dignity. Armor protects your wound. And if you are not careful, you may become so focused on never being disrespected again that you start treating everyone like a threat. You become cold, suspicious, proud. You confuse softness with weakness. You confuse kindness with surrender. You confuse never needing anyone with strength. But that is not power. That is fear with better posture. A truly powerful person does not need to become cruel to avoid being disrespected. They do not punish everyone for what a few people revealed. They do not turn their heart into a locked room and call it wisdom. The deeper Stoic path is harder. Remain kind, but not controllable. Remain calm, but not resentful. Remain open, but not available to disrespect. That is higher discipline. Anyone can become cold after being hurt. Coldness is easy. It freezes the wound by freezing everything around it. But if you freeze everything, you also lose what is still honest, good, respectful, and alive. You did not learn boundaries to become empty. You learned boundaries to stay whole. This is the final truth. The goal is not to make everyone respect you. Some people never will. Not because you failed, but because respecting you would require them to see you clearly. And some people are too invested in seeing you small. The real goal is to stop betraying yourself when respect is withheld. That is where power lives. You do not need to win every argument. You do not need to get the perfect apology. You do not need to make them admit they were wrong. You do not need to explain your pain until they finally understand it. 1. They may never understand. They may tell the story in a way that makes them innocent and you dramatic. Let them. Your task is not to control their reaction to your self-respect. Your task is to make sure their disrespect no longer controls your reaction to yourself. So when someone interrupts you, pause. When someone insults you as a joke, let the silence expose it. When someone questions your choices to gain control, stop explaining. When disrespect becomes a pattern, create distance. And when you walk away, do not turn your pain into pride. Return to yourself, because disrespect is information. It tells you about their limits, their hidden motives, their perception, or their need for control. But it does not get to become your identity. Their behavior is information. It is not your worth. So stay calm, stay powerful, and remember this. The most powerful answer to disrespect is not always what you say. Sometimes it is what you no longer surrender.